Champagne flutes shattered against the marble floor, but the silence that followed was louder than the crash. Hundreds of the country's most powerful shifters froze, their eyes locked on the center of the ballroom. A girl, frail enough to be broken by a whisper, lay unconscious in the arms of the most dangerous man on the continent. She hadn't tripped. She hadn't fainted from excitement. She had collapsed because her body had simply run out of fuel. Roman Calloway didn't look at the crowd. He looked at the woman in his arms, his eyes bleeding from human hazel to predator gold, and issued a low, vibrating growl that promised violence. The mating ball was over. The hunt for who did this to her had just begun. Hunger is not a sharp pain. In its advanced stages, it is a hollow, vibrating numbness that starts in the stomach and settles in the bones. Ivy Sterling stood near the edge of the sprawling ballroom inside the Calloway Heights Hotel, clutching a glass of sparkling water she wasn't allowed to drink. Her stepmother, Beatrice, had been explicit in the limousine ride over. "You are there to be seen, Ivy, not to consume. You've cost this family enough in legal fees this quarter. Try not to look like a scavenger." The Calloway Annual Merger Gala, colloquially known as the Mating Ball, was the apex of the social season in Chicago. It was where the wolf packs of the Midwest mingled with human venture capitalists. It was an arena of silk, diamonds, and pheromones. For Ivy, it was a test of endurance. She wore a vintage emerald gown that had once belonged to her mother. It hung loosely on her frame. Beatrice had refused to pay for a tailor, so Ivy had used 3 safety pins to cinch the waist, hiding the metal beneath a velvet sash. She felt like an imposter in her own skin. 3 days. That's how long it had been since her last full meal, which had consisted of leftover broth and a slice of stale rye bread. "Stop slouching," a voice hissed in her ear. Ivy straightened her spine, fighting the black spots dancing in her vision. Her stepsister Clarissa glided past, looking radiant in custom Dior. Clarissa smelled of expensive vanilla and smug satisfaction. Ivy smelled of nothing. She used scent blockers, a necessity to hide the fact that her wolf was dormant, a result of years of malnutrition. "Beatrice is watching," Clarissa whispered, swirling her champagne. "She says if you embarrass us tonight, you're sleeping in the garage again, and it's forecasted to snow." "I'm just standing here, Clarissa," Ivy murmured, her voice raspy. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "You look like a corpse in a prom dress. It's depressing." Clarissa rolled her eyes and drifted away toward a group of eligible beta bachelors. Ivy gripped a high-top table for support. The smell of the buffet prime rib, truffled mash, roasted pheasant was a physical assault. Her mouth watered painfully. Just one bite. If she could just sneak a canapé. She took a step toward the waiters, circulating with silver trays, but the room suddenly tilted on its axis. The chandeliers above smeared into streaks of blinding light. The chatter of the crowd warped, sounding like it was coming from underwater. "Not here," she begged her body. "Please, not here." She tried to pivot, to find the exit, but her legs were no longer receiving signals from her brain. She stumbled forward. The collision was hard. She slammed into a wall, except the wall was warm, solid, and covered in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. The scent hit her before she even made contact. It wasn't just a smell. It was an atmospheric pressure. Rain on hot asphalt, aged bourbon, and something wild, metallic, and terrifyingly powerful. Currents of electricity, hotter than anything she had ever felt, arced from where her skin brushed the fabric of his suit. Her dormant wolf, which hadn't stirred in years, suddenly howled in the back of her mind. A desperate, clawing sound. "Mate," the word shattered her remaining consciousness. Ivy looked up. Way up, she found herself staring into eyes the color of hardened amber. The face was angular, brutal in its handsomeness, with a jawline that looked carved from granite. Roman Calloway, the Alpha King, the CEO of Calloway Holdings, the man who owned half the city and commanded every wolf within 500 miles. "Careful," he rumbled. His voice vibrated through her chest, deeper than the double bass playing in the orchestra. Ivy tried to apologize. She tried to say, "Forgive me, Alpha," but her blood sugar had bottomed out. The adrenaline of the mate bond was too much for her frazzled system to handle. She whispered. Her knees buckled. She didn't hit the floor. Large, calloused hands snapped out with impossible speed, catching her by the waist and the nape of her neck. The contact burned, searing and possessive. The last thing Ivy Sterling saw before the darkness took her completely was Roman Calloway's expression shifting from annoyance to a look of utter, devastating recognition. And then, The tray of champagne glasses next to them shattered, bringing the room to a dead halt. The world came back in fragments. The hum of a high-end HVAC system, the smell of antiseptic mixed with that overwhelming scent of rain and bourbon, the feeling of sheets that had a thread count higher than Ivy's entire life savings. Ivy gasped, bolting upright. "Easy," a calm voice commanded. She was in a bedroom the size of her stepmother's entire downstairs floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Chicago skyline, glittering in the winter night. But she wasn't alone. Standing at the foot of the massive bed was Roman Calloway. He had discarded his suit jacket. His tie was undone, and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. He looked like a predator pacing a cage. Next to him was a woman in a white coat, typing furiously on a tablet. This was Dr. Eris Reed, the most renowned shifter physician in the state. "Where?" Ivy's voice cracked. She reached for her throat. An IV line tugged at her arm. "You're in the Calloway penthouse," Roman said. He didn't move toward her, but his gaze was heavy, pinning her to the mattress. "You've been unconscious for 4 hours. I have to go," Ivy said, panic spiking her heart rate. The monitor next to the bed beeped rapidly. "Beatrice." "She'll kill me." "Beatrice Hartwell?" Roman asked, the name tasting like poison in his mouth. "She's currently in the lobby, screaming at my security team. She claims you're a drug addict who relapsed at the gala." Ivy flinched. It was the standard lie. Beatrice had used it for years to explain why Ivy was so thin, why she was never seen at school events, why she had no friends. "I'm not," Ivy whispered, looking down at the IV tape. "I don't do drugs." "We know," Dr. Reed said, stepping forward. Her tone was clinical but softened by pity. "I ran a full toxicology screen. Ivy, you're clean. You're also in a state of ketoacidosis." Roman took a step closer. The air in the room grew heavier. "Tell her the rest, Aris." Dr. Reed adjusted her glasses. "Ivy, you are 22 years old, but you weigh barely 90 pounds. Your bone density is comparable to a woman in her 70s. You have scars on your vertebrae consistent with prolonged exposure to hard surfaces, sleeping on concrete, perhaps? And your stomach lining. It's atrophied." The doctor looked at Roman, then back to Ivy. "You didn't collapse from excitement. You collapsed because you are starving to death. Medically speaking, you shouldn't have been able to walk into that ballroom at all." Ivy pulled the duvet up to her chin, shame burning her cheeks. "I'm fine. I forgot to eat lunch." "Don't lie to me," Roman growled. It wasn't a shout. It was a command laced with alpha authority that forced Ivy's wolf to bare its neck in submission. She trembled. Roman closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He sat on the edge of the bed. Up close, he was terrifying. The raw power radiating off him was intoxicating, but his anger was a palpable wave of heat. "I felt the bond, Ivy," Roman said low, so Dr. Reed couldn't hear the intimacy of it. "I know you felt it too. You are my mate." Ivy squeezed her eyes shut. "Please, Alpha, reject me. Just do it now. I can't be this for you. I'm a liability." "Is that what they told you?" Roman reached out, his knuckles brushing her cheek. The spark was immediate, soothing the ache in her bones. "That you're a liability? I'm broken," she whispered, "and I have to go home." "You are home," Roman said. The finality in his tone was terrifying. And as for the Hartwells, no one starves the Alpha's mate and lives to brag about it. He stood up, turning to the doctor. "Eris, get her on a nutrient protocol. Liquid diet first. If she throws up, I want to know immediately." "Where are you going?" Ivy asked, fear gripping her. Roman stopped at the door. He adjusted his cufflinks, his face settling into a mask of cold corporate ruthlessness. "Your stepmother is downstairs making a scene," Roman said. "I'm going to go down there and destroy her life. Get some rest, Ivy." The elevator ride down to the lobby was silent, but inside Roman Calloway's head, a war was raging. His wolf, usually a disciplined beast, was clawing at the walls of his mind, demanding blood. "She is starving. They hurt her. Kill them." Roman pushed the beast down. Killing Beatrice Hartwell in the lobby of the Calloway Heights Hotel would be bad for stock prices. There were smarter ways to gut a fish. When the elevator doors dinged open, the chaos was audible. Flashbulbs were popping. The paparazzi had swarmed the entrance. Beatrice Hartwell stood near the concierge desk, playing the victim perfectly. She was a woman who wore Chanel-like armor. Beside her stood Clarissa, looking tragically embarrassed. My stepdaughter has struggled for years. Beatrice was sobbing to a reporter from the Wolf Street Journal. We've tried rehab. We've tried therapy. She stole a pass to get in here tonight. I am mortified that she ruined Mr. Calloway's evening. Roman stepped into the lobby. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The security team, sensing his presence, parted instantly. The reporters fell silent. Beatrice turned, her tear-streaked face lighting up with false hope. Alpha Calloway. Oh, thank heavens. I am so sorry about Ivy. If you'll just have your men drag her out, we can take her to the clinic ourselves. Roman stopped 3 feet from her. He towered over her. He didn't blink. You signed an NDA when you entered the premises, Mrs. Hartwell, Roman said. His voice was calm, conversational, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Clause 4, Section B. Guests shall not engage in conduct detrimental to the Calloway brand. Beatrice faltered. Excuse me? My daughter just overdosed on your floor. Toxicology came back clean, Roman interrupted. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket a printout Eris had handed him. Malnutrition, dehydration, vitamin deficiencies consistent with long-term neglect, healed fractures in her ulna and ribs that were never set by a doctor. The reporters gasped. Phones were raised higher, recording every word. Beatrice's face went pale. That's absurd. She's sick. She has an eating disorder. We've tried to feed her. My legal team is currently seizing the security footage from your estate, Roman lied. He hadn't ordered it yet, but he would in the next 10 minutes. And I've frozen the Hartwell accounts pending an investigation into the mismanagement of your late husband's trust fund. The fund that was supposed to be for Ivy. You can't do that, Clarissa shrieked, stepping forward. Do you know who we are? Roman looked at Clarissa as if she were a stain on his shoe. I know exactly who you are, Roman said. Then, he looked directly into the camera lens of the nearest reporter. Ivy Sterling is under my protection. Any slander spoken against her from this moment forward will be met with a defamation lawsuit that will bankrupt your great-grandchildren. He turned back to Beatrice, leaning in close so only she could hear. You turned my maid into a skeleton, he hissed, his eyes flashing gold. Pray that she asks me to spare you, because if she doesn't, I will strip the meat from your bones professionally, financially, and socially. Get out of my hotel. Your mate? Beatrice whispered, her eyes widening in horror. Security, Roman barked. Remove this trash. As Beatrice and Clarissa were escorted out, screaming protests, Roman didn't feel triumph. He felt a vibrating anxiety. He had claimed her publicly. He had just put a target on her back. He turned to his head of security, a grim-faced bear-shifter named Bassett. Lock down the penthouse floor, Roman ordered. No one goes in or out but Dr. Reed. And find out why Ivy Sterling's scent was masked. She's an Omega, Bassett, but she smells like nothing. Someone went to great lengths to hide her from me. Bassett nodded. You think she was hiding? No, Roman said, looking back toward the elevator. I think someone was hiding her. Ivy isn't just a neglected stepchild, Bassett. The Hartwell fortune comes from the Sterling bloodline. If she's my mate, that makes her the Alpha Queen. If she claims her inheritance, Beatrice loses everything. It's about the money, Bassett grunted. It's always about the money. Roman adjusted his cuffs. Dig up the father's death certificate. Sterling died in a car crash 10 years ago, right? I want to see the autopsy. You think he was murdered? I think, Roman said, his voice dark, that Ivy Sterling is the rightful heir to the Silvercrest Pack lands, which Beatrice sold to my competitors last week. This wasn't just abuse, Bassett. This was a corporate takeover masked as a family tragedy. Roman walked back toward the elevators. He had a mate to feed, and he had a conspiracy to unravel. The silence of the penthouse was not peaceful to Ivy. It was heavy, laden with the terrifying weight of expectation. She lay in the center of the king-sized bed, her body feeling less like flesh and blood, and more like a collection of brittle sticks held together by pain. Doctor. Eris Reed had adjusted the IV drip, her expression unreadable behind her rimless glasses. The glucose is stabilizing, Alpha, she murmured, checking the monitors. But her electrolytes are still chaotic. We're risking refeeding syndrome if we introduce solids too fast. Her heart could simply stop. Roman stood by the window, his back to the room. He had been on a call for the last 20 minutes, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that Ivy couldn't decipher. When he hung up, the air in the room seemed to tighten. Is she awake? He asked, not turning around. I am, Ivy whispered. Her voice sounded like grinding stones. Roman turned. The golden hue in his eyes had settled back into a deep, intense hazel, but the predator was still there, lurking just beneath the surface of the CEO. He walked to the bedside table where a silver tray sat. On it was a small porcelain bowl of bone broth. "You need to eat," Roman said. It wasn't a request. Ivy shrank back against the pillows. The smell of the broth, rich, salty, savory, hit her like a physical blow. Her stomach cramped violently, a spasm of hunger so intense it nauseated her. "I can't," she said, tears pricking her eyes. "If I eat, I'll get sick. It happens every time." "That's because you've been scavenging garbage for months," Roman said bluntly. He sat on the edge of the mattress dipping under his weight. He picked up the spoon. "This is formulated for your condition. Eris made it herself." He dipped the spoon into the broth and held it to her lips. Ivy stared at the spoon. It was silver, heavy, engraved with the Calloway crest. It was worth more than the clothes she had worn to the gala. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You're the Alpha King. I'm nobody." Beatrice said I was a mistake, a burden. Roman's hand didn't waver. "Beatrice is a liar who is currently trying to liquidate her assets before my lawyers freeze them. You are not a mistake, Ivy. You are my mate. And in my pack, we don't let our own starve." "My pack." The words triggered a deep, primal longing in Ivy's chest. She opened her mouth. The broth was warm, coating her throat like liquid silk. For a second, it was heaven. Then, the cramps hit. Ivy gasped, clutching her stomach. "Breathe," Dr. Reed coached from the corner. "It's your stomach expanding. It's atrophied. It's going to hurt." "It hurts," Ivy whimpered, curling into a ball. Roman set the bowl down and did something that shocked her. He didn't pull away. He didn't look disgusted by her weakness. Instead, he placed his large, warm hand directly over her stomach. A low, vibrating purr started in his chest. It wasn't a human sound. It was the sound of a wolf comforting its pack. The vibration traveled through his hand and into her body, acting like a sonic massage for her cramping muscles. The pain didn't vanish, but it dulled, replaced by a strange, tingling heat. "Better?" he asked softly. Ivy nodded, her eyes wide. She looked at his hand, massive, capable of crushing bone, yet so gentle on her fragile frame. "You have magic," she whispered. "It's not magic," Roman said, his eyes locking onto hers. "It's the bond. My biology recognizes yours. It wants to heal you, but you have to do the work, Ivy. One more spoon." She took another, and another. By the fifth spoonful, she was exhausted, sweat beading on her forehead. "That's enough for now," Dr. Reed said. "Let her sleep." Roman didn't move his hand from her stomach. "You mentioned the hospital bills earlier," he said quietly. "You were worried about the cost." Ivy looked away. "Beatrice controls my trust fund. She says there's barely enough to cover the mortgage on the estate. If I cost too much, she'll take it out of the grocery budget." Roman's jaw tightened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "There is no budget anymore, Ivy," he said, his voice cold as ice. "I bought the debt on the Hartwell estate this morning while you were sleeping." Ivy froze. "You... what?" "I own the house," Roman said calmly. "I own the cars. I own the debt. Technically, Beatrice is currently trespassing on my property." "She'll be furious," Ivy whispered, terror gripping her. "She keeps a riding crop in the study. If she finds out..." Roman leaned in, his face inches from hers. The intensity of his gaze made her breath hitch. "Let her be furious," he growled softly. "If she ever touches you again, Ivy, if she ever even raises a hand to you, I will dismantle her world so thoroughly that history books will use her as an example of what happens when you cross a Calloway." He stood up, adjusting his cuffs, the moment of intimacy snapping shut like a steel trap. "Sleep," he commanded. "I have a meeting with a forensic accountant. We're going to find out where your money really went." As he walked to the door, Ivy called out, her voice barely a whisper. "Roman?" He paused, hand on the doorknob. He didn't turn back. "Thank you," she said. He stood there for a long beat, his shoulders rigid. "Don't thank me yet," he said darkly. "Wait until you see what I do to them." The sun had risen over Chicago, casting a cold gray light over the city. But inside Roman's private study, the mood was even darker. The study was a fortress of mahogany and leather. On the massive desk, Piles of documents were spread out like a war map. Arthur Pendleton, the best forensic accountant in the shifter world, sat opposite Roman. Arthur was a mole shifter, literally. He was small, nearly blind without his thick glasses, but he could dig through shell companies and offshore accounts faster than a computer algorithm. "It's worse than we thought, Alpha," Arthur said, pushing a stack of papers toward Roman. Roman picked up the document. It was a copy of Ivy's father's will. "Richard Sterling was a smart man," Arthur explained, polishing his glasses nervously. "He founded Sterling Industries, which held the deed to the Silvercrest Pack lands. Those lands are rich in iridium, extremely valuable for tech manufacturing." "I know," Roman said, scanning the document. "I tried to buy that land 5 years ago. Beatrice told me it wasn't for sale." "It wasn't for sale because she didn't own it," Arthur said. He tapped a clause on page 4. "According to the original will, which I found buried in the archives of the lawyer who drafted it, a man who mysteriously died of a heart attack 2 weeks after Richard the land was left in a jagged trust." "English, Arthur," Roman snapped. "It means the land goes to Ivy upon her 18th birthday," Arthur said. "Beatrice gets a stipend, but she has no control over the capital assets. She's just a caretaker." Roman threw the paper down. "So how did she sell it?" "I heard rumors she closed a deal with the Vanguard Group last week. She forged the transfer of power," Arthur said. "She declared Ivy mentally incompetent." Roman froze. The air in the room crackled with static electricity. "She did what?" "Look at this." Arthur slid a medical file across the desk. 3 years ago, Beatrice had a private doctor, Dr. Vance, who lost his license shortly after, sign a document stating that Ivy suffered from severe schizophrenia and was unable to manage her own affairs. This gave Beatrice power of attorney. Roman read the file. It described Ivy as violent, delusional, and self-harming. It was a complete fabrication designed to strip a child of her birthright. "This is how she justified the malnutrition," Roman realized, his voice dangerously quiet. "She claimed Ivy was refusing to eat because of delusions. She created a paper trail to cover up the abuse." "Exactly," Arthur said. "And with that power of attorney, she sold the Silvercrest lands to Vanguard. The deal closes in 48 hours. If that deal goes through, the land is gone, and the money, roughly $200 million, will be wired to an account in the Cayman Islands under Beatrice's maiden name. She's planning to run," Roman said. "She sells the land, takes the cash, and leaves Ivy to rot in some state-run facility." "Precisely." Roman stood up and walked to the window. Below him, the city bustled, unaware of the predators in the penthouse. "Who is behind Vanguard?" Roman asked. "Vanguard is a shell company. Who is the actual buyer?" Arthur hesitated. He pulled one last document from his briefcase. "I had to call in a favor with a contact at the Treasury Department to find this. Vanguard is a holding company for the Northern Alpha. Silas Blackwood." Roman stiffened. Silas Blackwood, his oldest rival, a wolf who believed in the old ways' dominance through cruelty. If Blackwood got a foothold in Chicago, it would mean war. "Beatrice isn't just a thief," Roman growled. "She's a traitor. She's selling strategic territory to an enemy pack." The intercom on his desk buzzed. It was Bassett. "Alpha." Bassett's voice was tense. "Turn on the TV. Channel 5. Now." Roman grabbed the remote and flicked the screen on. Beatrice Hartwell was standing in front of a microphone, flanked by her weeping daughter Clarissa. They were outside their estate, wearing modest black clothing, looking like grieving saints. "We are just praying for her return," Beatrice sobbed into the cameras. "Ivy is a troubled girl. She has episodes. She ran away from the gala last night after having a breakdown. We have reason to believe she has been abducted by certain powerful elements who wish to take advantage of her fragile mental state." The reporter thrust a microphone forward. "Are you referring to Roman Calloway?" Beatrice looked directly at the camera, her eyes hard and calculating. "Mr. Calloway took my daughter against her will. He has refused to let us see her. We believe he is holding her hostage. We have contacted the police, and we are demanding that he release her immediately." Roman stared at the screen. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. She was flipping the narrative. If Roman didn't release Ivy, he looked like a kidnapper. If he did release her, Beatrice would use the mental incompetence order to drag her back to the hellhole, sedate her, and disappear with the money before anyone could ask questions. Roman crushed the remote in his hand, plastic and circuitry shattering. "Bassett," he barked at the intercom. "Get the car." "Where are we going, Alpha?" "The police are already on their way to the hotel." "Let them come," Roman said, buttoning his suit jacket. I'm going to the one place Beatrice doesn't think I'll go. Where? To the bank, Roman said. I'm going to buy the Vanguard Group. Alpha. That will cost billions, Arthur stammered. You'd have to leverage Callaway Holdings. It's financial suicide. Roman turned to the trembling accountant, his eyes blazing gold. She starved my mate, Roman said. She sold my territory, and now she's trying to destroy my reputation. I don't care about the money, Arthur. I'm going to buy the company she's selling to, cancel the deal, and then I'm going to personally evict her from my city. He stormed toward the door. And Arthur? Yes, Alpha? Get the files on Dr. Vance. If he faked Ivy's diagnosis, I want him found. I want him to confess. And I want it on video. Roman exited the study, his mind racing. He had to tell Ivy. He had to tell her that the woman she called mother wasn't just cruel, she was a criminal mastermind who had stolen her life. He walked down the hall to the guest wing. He opened the door to Ivy's room gently. She was awake, sitting up, watching the same news report on the TV mounted on the wall. Her face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. They think I'm crazy, she whispered as Roman entered. Everyone believes her. She's so good at it. I should just go back. If I go back, she'll stop attacking you. Roman crossed the room and turned off the TV. You are never going back there, he said. You can't stop the police, Roman. She has the papers. She has the medical power of attorney. Papers burn, Roman said, sitting beside her. He took her hands. They were cold. And as for the power of attorney, it's void. Ivy looked at him, confused. Why? Because, Roman said, revealing the ace up his sleeve. He hadn't even told Arthur yet. The wolf law supersedes human law in matters of mating. Once I marked you metaphysically, you became a citizen of the Callaway Pack. And in my pack, the Alpha's word is law. But you haven't marked me, Ivy said, touching her neck. Not really. We haven't. No, Roman said. But we're going to get married. Ivy stopped breathing. What? It's the only way to break her legal hold on you instantly, Roman said, his face dead serious. Spousal rights override parental guardianship. If you marry me, Ivy, her power of attorney dissolves. You become Ivy Callaway. And no one touches a Callaway. Ivy stared at him. The man who had saved her life. The most powerful man in the city. He was offering her a contract. A shield. Marriage? She squeaked. Tonight? Roman said. I've already called the judge. The judge arrived at 2 a.m. He was a small, nervous man named Judge Halloway, wearing a trench coat over his pajamas. He had been the Callaway family magistrate for 30 years, and he knew better than to ask why he was marrying the Alpha King to a malnourished girl in a penthouse in the middle of the night. The ceremony was nothing like the fairy tales Ivy had read as a child. There were no flowers, no organ music, no guests. There was only the hum of the city below and the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor that Dr. Reed insisted stay attached to Ivy's chest. Ivy sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a silk robe that belonged to Roman. It swallowed her frame, smelling of sandalwood and power. She felt dizzy, not just from the hunger that still gnawed at her, but from the surreal nature of her reality. Yesterday, she was a ghost in her own home. Today, she was becoming a queen. Do you, Ivy Sterling, take Roman Callaway to be your lawfully wedded husband? Judge Halloway asked, his voice shaking slightly as he looked at Roman's intense, predatory stillness. Ivy looked up at Roman. He was standing beside the bed, holding her frail hand in his massive one. His thumb traced circles on her knuckles, a grounding, physical tether to the earth. Ivy's voice caught. She looked at the door, half expecting Beatrice to burst in with a whip. I do. And do you, Roman Callaway? I do, Roman interrupted, his voice a low growl that vibrated in Ivy's bones. He didn't look at the judge. He looked only at her. I vow to protect you, Ivy, to feed you, to destroy anyone who hunts you. This is my bond. It wasn't the standard vow. It was a wolf's vow. The judge cleared his throat. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Roman didn't kiss her. Instead, he slid a ring onto her finger. It was heavy platinum and onyx, with the Callaway crest engraved on the face. It was too big, sliding loosely on her thin finger, but Roman closed her hand into a fist around it. Keep it safe, he whispered. It's a shield. The moment the paperwork was signed, the elevator doors in the hallway dinged. Chaos erupted. "Police, open up!" Heavy boots thundered down the hallway. Bassett, the head of security, was shouting, trying to hold them back, but there were too many. The doors to the bedroom burst open. 4 uniformed officers stormed in, guns drawn but pointed at the floor. Behind them strode Detective Miller, a hard-faced human cop who had been trying to pin something on Roman for years. And behind him, wearing a look of triumphant sorrow, was Beatrice Hartwell. "Oh, my baby!" Beatrice shrieked, rushing past the officers toward the bed. "Look at what he's done to you! He's got you drugged!" Roman stepped in front of Ivy. He didn't raise his hands. He simply existed as a wall of pure, unadulterated menace. Beatrice slammed to a halt, faltering under the weight of his alpha aura. "Step away from the girl, Calloway," Detective Miller barked, hand on his holster. "We have a warrant for your arrest for kidnapping and custodial interference. Mrs. Hartwell has medical power of attorney." "I'm taking her home," Beatrice spat, peering around Roman to glare at Ivy. "Get up, Ivy. Stop acting like a spoiled brat and come with me. The car is waiting." Ivy shrank back against the headboard, her heart monitor beeping faster. "Beep, beep, beep, beep." "She isn't going anywhere," Roman said. His voice was calm, but the air in the room grew static. "You have no legal standing," Beatrice screamed, dropping the act. "She is a minor in the eyes of the court because of her condition. I own her. I own the trust. I own the house. And I own her." "Actually," Roman said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the marriage certificate, the ink still wet. "You don't." He handed the paper to Detective Miller. The detective frowned, shining his flashlight on the document. He read it once, then twice. His face paled. "What is this?" Beatrice demanded, snatching the paper. She read it, and for a moment, the only sound in the room was the HVAC system. "No," she whispered. "No, this is fake. She can't marry. She's incompetent. I have a doctor's note from Dr. Vance saying she has the mental capacity of a child." "Dr. Vance?" Dr. Eris Reed stepped forward from the shadows, holding a tablet. "You mean the Dr. Vance who lost his license for opioid distribution? The one who is currently in custody?" Beatrice froze. "I just finished a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation of Mrs. Calloway," Dr. Reed said, emphasizing the new name. "She is malnourished, abused, and traumatized. But she is sane, she is lucid, and she is fully capable of consenting to marriage." Roman took a step toward Beatrice. The stepmother retreated, hitting the chest of a police officer. "Spousal rights supersede parental guardianship," Roman said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "She is my wife, Beatrice, which means you are currently trespassing in her home and harassing the matriarch of the Calloway pack." Beatrice looked around wildly. The police officers were lowering their weapons. Detective Miller was holstering his gun, shaking his head. "It checks out," Miller muttered. "If they're married, the custody order is void. It's a civil matter now." "You can't leave her here," Beatrice shrieked, grabbing the detective's arm. "He'll kill her." "The only thing killing her was your diet plan," Roman snarled. He turned to the officers. "Remove this woman from my sight. If she steps foot on Calloway property again, I will interpret it as an act of war." "This isn't over," Beatrice screamed as the officers escorted her out, her voice echoing down the hallway. "You think you've won, Roman? You think you can stop the sale? Silas Kincaid is already on his way. He'll burn this city to the ground before he lets you keep that land." The door slammed shut. Silence returned. Ivy was trembling so hard her teeth chattered. Roman turned back to the bed. The anger vanished from his face, replaced by that deep, aching concern. "It's done," he said softly, sitting beside her. "She can't touch you. You're safe." Ivy looked at the ring on her finger. She looked at the man who had just declared war on half the city for her. "Silas Kincaid," she whispered. "The Northern Alpha. That's who she sold the land to?" "Yes," Roman said. "But don't worry. I'm handling it." "No," Ivy said. A strange clarity was rising in her mind, fueled by the glucose in her system and the ring on her hand. "You can't handle it alone. Kincaid doesn't care about laws. He cares about blood." She sat up straighter, wincing as her muscles protested. "I know where the deed is," she said. Roman froze. "What?" "The real deed," Ivy said. "My father didn't trust banks. He didn't trust lawyers. He told me, when I was little, he said if anything ever happened, the heart of the pack is hidden in the wolf's mouth." "The wolf's mouth?" Roman frowned. "That's a cave system on the Silvercrest land. It's been sealed for decades. That's where it is, Ivy said. The original deed. The one that proves the land cannot be sold, only inherited by blood. If we get that, Kincaid's contract with Beatrice is worthless. Roman looked at her, a slow smile spreading across his face. It was the first time she had seen him truly smile. It was devastating. Then we have a heist to plan, Mrs. Calloway. The blizzard that hammered the windshield of the armored SUV wasn't just a weather system. It felt like a warning from nature itself. The Silver Crest lands, a sprawling expanse of 3,000 acres of dense pine and jagged rock, were rejecting them. Inside the vehicle, the heating system hummed, fighting a losing battle against the sub-zero temperatures outside. Ivy Calloway sat in the back seat, wrapped in a heated wool blanket, her fingers tracing the rim of a thermos filled with warm protein shake. She was still frail, her cheekbones too sharp and her wrists too thin, but her eyes, once dull with starvation, were now burning with a cold, focused determination. "We're losing traction," Bassett grunted from the driver's seat. The massive tires of the custom-built vehicle spun against a patch of black ice before finding purchase on the gravel. The plow crews haven't been out here in years. Beatrice let the infrastructure rot. She didn't care about the land, Ivy said softly, looking out at the white void. She only cared about the mineral rights under it. She viewed my father's legacy as a piggy bank to smash open. Roman sat beside her, checking the magazine of his sidearm. He wore tactical gear over thermal layers, looking less like a CEO and more like the apex predator he was. He didn't look at the snow. He looked at Ivy. "You don't have to go out there," Roman said, his voice low. "Bassett and I can retrieve the box. You're still recovering, Ivy. The cold will sap your energy faster than you think." "I have to go," Ivy insisted, turning to face him. "My father didn't hide the deed in a safe deposit box. He hid it in the wolf's mouth. He keyed the location to a memory only I would have. You'd tear the whole mountain apart looking for it. I know exactly which stone to turn." Roman studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then we move fast. Beatrice knows we're coming. My sources say she contacted the buyer an hour ago. She's desperate." The car lurched to a halt. A fallen redwood, ancient and massive, blocked the path. "End of the line," Bassett announced. "We're on foot from here. It's a half-mile hike to the ridge." Roman opened the door, and the wind howled, carrying needles of ice that stung exposed skin. He stepped out, his boots crunching into 2 feet of fresh powder. Before Ivy could even attempt to step down, Roman reached into the car and scooped her up into his arms. "Roman, I can walk," she protested, though her teeth immediately began to chatter. "Not in this," he growled, pulling her close to his chest, shielding her face from the biting wind with his coat. "Hold on to me, and keep your eyes closed. I'm going to run." Ivy buried her face in the crook of his neck, inhaling the scent of cedar, rain, and warm skin. He moved with terrifying speed. To a human observer, he would have been a blur, a dark shadow cutting through the white storm. He didn't stumble. He didn't slow down. He was a creature of the wild, returning to his element. They reached the base of the cliff face in minutes. The entrance to the cave system known as the Wolf's Mouth was nearly invisible, obscured by a curtain of frozen vines and snowdrifts. Roman set her down inside the mouth of the cave, where the air was still and dry. He signaled to Bassett to guard the entrance. "It's deep inside," Ivy whispered, her voice echoing slightly. "The third chamber. There's a formation that looks like a seated wolf." She led the way, her hand in Roman's. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the tactical light mounted on Roman's shoulder. The cave smelled of damp earth and iron, the scent of the iridium ore that made this land worth billions. They found the chamber. It was a cathedral of stone, silent and imposing. Ivy walked toward the back wall, her heart pounding against her ribs. She found the stalagmite that looked like a wolf howling at a stone moon. "Here," she murmured. She knelt in the dirt, ignoring the pain in her knees. "Papa said the wolf guards the heart of the pack." She felt along the base of the rock. Her fingers brushed a loose stone. With a grunt of effort, she pried it loose. Behind it was a hollowed-out niche containing a heavy, rusted metal lockbox. Roman stepped forward. "Allow me." He didn't bother with the lock. He gripped the lid and the base, his muscles bunching as he tore the metal screeching apart. Inside, wrapped in layers of oilcloth and plastic, was a thick sheaf of documents. Ivy peeled back the layers. The paper was yellowed but legible. The Sterling family trust. Irrevocable. Transferable only by blood right to the direct heir. "It's real," Ivy breathed. a tear leaking from her eye. She lied to everyone. She never had the right to sell. She forged the competency papers to bypass this deed. Touching, a voice boomed from the darkness behind them, truly heartwarming. I'd applaud, but my hands are freezing. Roman spun around, shoving Ivy behind him in a fluid motion. At the entrance of the chamber stood Alpha Magnus Roche. He was a corporate shark in a wolf's skin, the CEO of the Northern Mining Consortium. He was flanked by 4 heavily armed enforcers, and shivering violently beside him, looking manic and terrified, was Beatrice Hartwell. "You led us right to it," Beatrice screeched, her voice cracking. "I told you she knew where it was. I told you." "Quiet, Beatrice," Magnus said smoothly. He looked at Roman. "Calloway, you're far from home. This is Northern territory now." "It's not anyone's territory until the ink is dry," Roman said, his voice calm but laced with a lethal edge. "And according to the document in my wife's hand, the seller had no right to sell. You're trespassing on private land, Magnus." "I have a signed contract," Magnus shrugged. "If Beatrice here defrauded me, that's a matter for the courts. But right now, I have heavy machinery idling at the perimeter and a shareholders meeting on Monday. I need that deed, Roman. Hand it over, and you can walk out of here. Keep the girl. I just want the dirt." Roman's eyes flashed gold. "You think I'm gonna let you strip mine my mate's inheritance? I think you're outnumbered," Magnus said, nodding to his men. The enforcers raised their weapons, assault rifles loaded with silver-tipped rounds. "And I think you have a fragile, recovering human to protect. You can't fight us all and keep her safe." Beatrice stepped forward, her eyes wild. "Give it to him, Ivy. Give him the paper, you ungrateful wretch. Do you know how much debt we're in? Do you know what I sacrificed to keep a roof over your head?" "You sacrificed me!" Ivy yelled, stepping out from behind Roman's back. "Stay back, Ivy," Roman warned, tensing to spring. "No," Ivy said, her voice ringing off the cave walls. She held the documents up, but she wasn't looking at Beatrice. She was looking at Magnus. "You're a businessman, Alpha Roche," Ivy said. "You don't care about pack feuds. You care about profit margins." Magnus tilted his head. "I'm listening." "You want the iridium," Ivy said. "But you didn't do your due diligence. Beatrice blocked access to the geological surveys, didn't she? She told you it was a clean site." Magnus narrowed his eyes. "She said the surveys were lost in a fire." "They weren't lost," Ivy said. "My father hid them, because they contain an environmental impact report from 10 years ago." She took a step closer, ignoring the guns pointed at her chest. "The water table under this mountain feeds into the Great Lakes Reservoir." Ivy lied, or rather, she bluffed with a grain of truth she remembered from her father's rants. "The iridium here is mixed with high concentrations of arsenic. If you start strip mining, you will poison the water supply for 3 states. The cave went silent. "The EPA has a copy of that report in a sealed file, triggered to open if the land title ever changes hands," Ivy continued, her voice gaining strength. "If you kill us and take this land, you won't get a mine. You'll get a federal cleanup site. You'll be tied up in litigation for 50 years. Your stock will plummet. You'll be bankrupt by Christmas." Magnus looked at Ivy. He looked at the paper in her hand. Then he looked at Beatrice. "Is this true?" Magnus asked softly. "She's lying," Beatrice shrieked. "She's a mental patient. She doesn't know anything. Just shoot them." "My father was Richard Sterling," Ivy said, cutting her off. "He was the most paranoid man in Chicago. Do you really think he didn't have a failsafe?" Ivy locked eyes with Magnus. "You can kill us, Alpha, but you'll be the king of a poisoned mountain. Or you can walk away. You can sue Beatrice for fraud to recoup your deposit, and I will grant you a sustainable timber contract for the surface forests. Low overhead, steady profit, no EPA involvement." Roman looked at his wife, awe clearly written on his face. She was speaking the language of monsters' leverage and liability. Magnus lowered his gun. He looked at his enforcers and signaled them to stand down. "I hate federal audits," Magnus muttered. He turned his cold gaze to Beatrice. "You sold me a lemon, Beatrice." "No, no, Magnus, please." Beatrice grabbed his coat. "She's bluffing. Kill her." Magnus shoved Beatrice away with a sneer. She stumbled, falling hard onto the rocky floor. "The deal is dead," Magnus announced. "We're leaving. Calloway, you have 24 hours to send over that timber contract. If I don't see it, I come back with lawyers." "Done," Roman said. Magnus and his team turned and marched out of the cavern, leaving Beatrice kneeling in the dirt, her world collapsing around her. "No," Beatrice whimpered. She looked up at Ivy, her face a mask of twisted hatred. You ruined everything. I almost did, Ivy said, her voice trembling with the aftershocks of adrenaline. But then someone fed me. You little witch, Beatrice screamed. She grabbed a jagged rock from the floor and lunged. It was a desperate, clumsy attack. She aimed for Ivy's head. Roman didn't even shift. He moved with the brutal efficiency of an executioner. He caught Beatrice's wrist in midair. There was a sickening wet crunch as he twisted. Beatrice screamed a high, piercing sound that echoed endlessly in the cave. She dropped the rock, clutching her shattered wrist, curling into a ball of misery. I told you, Roman whispered, his voice vibrating with suppressed violence. I told you that if you ever tried to hurt her again, I would break you. He loomed over her, his shadow swallowing her whole. Bassett has the police on the secure line. They are waiting at the bottom of the trail. You're going to prison, Beatrice. Not for a few months. For the rest of your natural life. Roman turned his back on her. He scooped Ivy up into his arms again. Let's go home, Mrs. Calloway, he said softly. I believe you missed dinner. 3 months later, the Calloway Spring Gala was, by all accounts, the event of the decade. The ballroom was awash in silk, diamonds, and the scent of expensive perfume. But the center of attention wasn't the orchestra or the ice sculptures. It was the high table. Ivy Calloway sat in a gown of shimmering midnight blue that hugged a figure that was no longer skeletal. Her curves had returned, soft and healthy. Her skin glowed with vitality. Roman sat beside her, his hand resting possessively on the back of her chair. He wasn't scowling at the room anymore. He looked content. A waiter placed a plate in front of Ivy. It wasn't broth. It wasn't a protein shake. It was a perfectly seared steak with truffle risotto. The room went quiet. Hundreds of eyes watched. They remembered the girl who had collapsed on this very floor. They remembered the scandal. Ivy picked up her fork. She looked at Roman. He winked. She took a bite. She chewed slowly, savoring the richness, the flavor, the life. How is it? Roman asked, leaning in close. It tastes like victory, Ivy whispered. Roman laughed, a deep, rich sound that made the nearby guests startle. Eat up, my queen. You have a board meeting in the morning. Ivy smiled, taking another bite. She was full. She was safe. And for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged. And that, my friends, is how Ivy Sterling went from a starving, forgotten ghost to the most powerful woman in the city. It wasn't just about finding a rich husband. It was about finding her voice and outsmarting the people who underestimated her. Beatrice Hartwell is currently serving 25 years in a maximum security federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted assault. Ivy and Roman Calloway have since merged their companies, creating a dynasty that controls half the Midwest. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please smash that like button. It helps the algorithm find more listeners like you. I want to know, do you think Ivy let Beatrice off too easy? Or was prison the best revenge? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next story.